On-the-scene video coverage of TCT 2012 is supported by Pradaxa.
We're back for on-the-scene video at TCT 2012. This is the late-breaking clinical trials, day one. And with me, Deepak Bhatt again and George Dangas, as before. Deepak, I'm going to throw TRILOGY-ACS into your lap.
Sure.
An interesting trial.
Yeah, I think so, but I was involved with the study. But just to remind everyone, that was a randomized comparison of prasugrel versus clopidogrel in the initial medical management of acute coronary syndromes, main results published in New England Journal. The analysis presented here looked specifically at the cohort that underwent angiography versus those that didn't, a pre-randomization variable. First of all, the ACS patients, even though they were medically managed, those that underwent an angiogram appeared to have lower event rates than those who didn't have an angiogram. That's not the randomized part of the study, but is interesting. The randomized part of the study is the prasugrel versus clopidogrel comparison. What was interesting was that in those patients that underwent an angiogram, in that subgroup, there was actually a statistically significant reduction in the primary endpoint, favoring prasugrel, favoring the more potent antiplatelet agent.
So this is a multi-international trial, wasn't it, Deepak?
Yes.
George, your thoughts about that? There are some differences that may have to do with geography. What do you think?
Actually, there are quite a few differences with geography. The utilization of angiogram was between 20 and 80%. And in that range, and was utilized a lot in North America and much less in other countries in the world. And therefore, are we looking into angiography-based stratification here, or are we looking into geographic-based stratification to a larger extent? That will be very difficult to decipher.
Yeah, well, the two are linked, but I think the key messages are, in general, ACS patients do an angio unless the contraindication, and whether more potent antiplatelet therapy is indicated. You know, this was a hypothesis-generating study. More work will need to be done.
Okay, so more studies, obviously, bigger studies, and we'll deal with the geographic issue maybe the next time around. All right, moving on. Partner B, now 3 years out. This is the partner non-operative cohort, remember, randomized against medical therapy. And George, you get the first shot at this one.
It's very interesting data because we had a staggering result of inoperable patients getting the new stent valve versus medical therapy plus possible valvuloplasty. Very good results with a very high mortality in the control group the first year. A lot of questions in general about how sick that population generally had been and whether these results would be durable after a year or two. Everybody would die anyhow. And it turns out that the 3-year results are very concordant with the 1-year results, that there is a clear separation of the of cardiovascular mortality overall. And I think that's a main message. Obviously, it's very difficult and challenging in a clinical trial that there is so much mortality to try and do a longer-term follow-up because you just have so much fewer patients to follow up and study.
And a lot of them crossed over because that, you know, statistically that makes it much more difficult to understand.
It absolutely does, but that's real life too. That is, if you've got somebody right in front of you dying, you've got to do what you got to do, trial notwithstanding.
Good news is they let some of these people cross over.
Absolutely, and the results.
For the purposes of this analysis, they did not count the crossovers, we censored them at the time they crossed over. So if they continue to survive, that didn't count.
Yeah, the results are solid. I mean, it's a large, durable benefit.
No
hard to argue with that.
Okay, so we have about 30 seconds here. The ETAP trial, a popliteal stent trial, the first time that this has really been done versus balloon angioplasty. George, quickly.
Due to the flexibility of the popliteal region, that's why we didn't want to put stents because we're afraid of the fracture. So the main message of the study, the primary endpoint of restenosis from 67 down to 45% and very few fractures, about 3%. I'm more interested to actually the proof of principle of no fractures with this type of stent they use, and perhaps with use of drug elution or other techniques that restenosis can go even further. I think this is a very encouraging study.
Yeah, Deepak, you're the big trialist. I think we're going to see a lot more in the lower leg, don't you?
Absolutely. For those of us that are doing peripheral intervention, the flexion areas, the femoral, or as studied here, the popliteal, tough areas to treat. So if we are able to stent lesions there, that could be a huge advance.
So there you have it for the late-breaking clinical trials, day one. We'll do this again for day two for the late-breaking clinical trials. Come back.